So, welcome to a webinar on literature reviews. My name is Charlene Martoni. I'm the Outreach Librarian for the Social Sciences here at Georgia State University. I'm excited to share some tips and tricks with you. Let's just start today's webinar by going over the topics that we're going to be talking about. I'm first going to go over the golden rule of literature reviews. I'm also going to describe the common types of literature reviews that you'll find in academia. I'll also discuss the goals of the process of literature review, some project management tools that you can use to make it a little bit easier. Also, some strategies that you can use to effectively search for information, the difference between scholarly articles and empirical articles, and how to select, evaluate, and synthesize your sources once you do find them. And then go on from that to complete higher order analysis. And if we have time, I'll talk about some writing strategies. If you can put into the chat some terms that you associate with literature review as you know it now. Maybe you've completed a literature review earlier on in your degree or in high school or outside of school. Yes. An exploration of current studies in the fields or related to your own topic. To read articles and summarize those articles. Yes. The state of knowledge, a summary of a topic. Yes, these are all very accurate. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what literature reviews are, how there are many different contexts for completing a literature review. But first, let's talk about the golden rule of literature reviews, which is to understand and follow the unique requirements set by your professor or your advisor. Each assignment is unique, every professor is unique, and so it is the responsibility of you, the researcher, the student, to ask clarifying questions to understand what the person who's assigning you this task really needs in the output. So there are four main types of literature reviews. The first is a narrative literature review, where you pull together and discuss past research. The second is a systematic literature review, which is kind of like a narrative literature review, except it's much more comprehensive. And it explains how the choices are made as an author is gathering and evaluating the information. Then there's a meta-analysis, which aggregates data from various different studies in order to take a new look at the data. And then there are focused analyses, which they're a thorough review of a specific element of a literature review. So if you've ever gone into the research before and you've noticed, wow, on this subject, they're all using these three methodologies. Let me look into this a little bit further to figure out any other methodologies that I can find within this subject. That would be a focused literature review specifically on the methodologies within your subject. If you would like to learn more about systematic literature reviews, I highly recommend Sage Research Methods. Sage Research Methods is a resource that you have access to with your tuition through the library. Systematic reviews is just one topic, but there are many topics within the scope of research inside of this resource. It's very interactive and very easy to navigate. So if everybody could pop into the chat and say the type of literature review you believe you will be completing. I'm going to pull up the definitions one more time. All right, a narrative and focused, I see. Good. Narrative. Systematic. Mostly focused, okay. Meta-analysis. And as you can see, we're only a few weeks, I guess, into the semester, and everybody really does have a sense of what kind of projects they're going to be working on, and literature reviews are very common for projects. So I would like to discuss the reasons why we go through the process of reviewing the literature. What it means by literature review is simply reviewing all of the scholarly literature that has been produced up until a certain point so that you are aware of what's going on. So the first reason is for academic discourse. We want to join the conversation inside of our research area, and we want to know what we're talking about. So to do that, we'll review the literature. We also use it to develop our scholarly identity, which means that we are going to be critiquing past research and developing and asserting our own viewpoint as researchers. And finally, we also want to transform knowledge. We want to deconstruct past research so that we can find trends and then reconstruct new research and new knowledge. In order to do this, because a literature review can be quite a large project, we need to be very organized in how we are conducting the literature review. A tip that I have is to use a reference management system. If you have used any of these reference management systems, Zotero, Mendeley, or EndNote, please indicate that in the chat. The reasons why you want to use a reference system is because it keeps your sources organized. You can save PDFs and links, which is really important because if you find a resource, for example, in our databases, we might lose access to that resource at some point. So if you can save it because you currently have access to it, that would be good for you. You also get automatic metadata added to the record that's created inside of the reference management system. And you can search within that metadata and add your own notes so that you can find concepts that are in multiple articles at one time. So I see somebody mentions that they used Mendeley, but it was a long time ago. I want to mention that the library offers really great workshops on Zotero, Mendeley, and EndNote. We also have research guides on that. If you would like some assistance getting in touch with those folks, just send me an email afterwards. I'll pull my email up at the end of the slideshow. One of the other great things about using a citation manager is that you can export your citations. It can create the citations for you, and it already has built into its system many different versions of citation. I would also recommend taking what I call field notes, and you can do that in a notebook, you could do it in your notes app, whatever you want, but you want to be recording the questions and reflections and predictions and decisions that you're making so that when it comes time to write the actual literature review, you remember what you were thinking. So you can do this when you are actually reading the literature, or you can do it when you are engaging in your day-to-day life. And yes, Nadia, you can get EndNote through GSU. Yeah. Okay. It's really important to save time with a search strategy. Serendipitous searching for information is very valuable, actually. But when you need to collect and analyze a lot of information in a very short amount of time, being strategic with your searching is important. So we're going to do a little exercise. Again, in the chat, if you could please tell me some words people might use to describe the concept of mental health. Emotional well-being, self-awareness, inducing behavior and relationships, influencing it. Abuse can be a factor of mental health. Yes, emotional well-being. Very good. So these are all synonyms for this term, and these synonyms can be selected very purposefully to incorporate into your search strategies. Okay, so we're going to take it one step further. What aspects of mental health might somebody want to research? Depression, the effects of stigma on mental health, relationships, mental impairment, childhood development, illness and solutions. So you can see that there's many different directions that a research topic that started with just mental health can go in. So choosing a word or a term that is specific to the direction that you want your research to go in can be important when trying to put parameters around your your research and make it more manageable. Okay, so what we just engaged in was keywording. We selected a few targeted keywords and variables, and that will be very helpful. But in addition to synonyms and variables, you want to consider antiquated language and specialized vocabulary, like specific terms that would only be used in a specific field. You're going to be needing to select an area to get your resources from, a database. And if you cannot find something that you need through the resources I'm about to show you, you can use our service, which is interlibrary loan, and request an item from a library somewhere elsewhere in the world, and we will try to get it for you. We have a very great network of libraries that we coordinate with for that. So to select a place where you can get your information and put your search strategy into it, you can go to either our Discover search, which is really useful for a beginning point for your research because it searches several of our resources all at one time. Though it's not very robust, it's not very specific. And I would encourage you, instead of using just the base bar, which is white, going into the advanced search because it will help you to break apart your research concepts in a more effective way. You can also select a specific database. It's really useful to select a database within your subject that you are searching. So if you're researching something within political science, choose a political science database. Sociology, choose a sociology database. Chemistry, and so forth. You can also find databases that are specialty databases like newspaper databases or artistic databases. And if you need any assistance with trying to find those, just contact your librarian and we'll help you. The library also has a really great digital collection. We have a lot of archives, and within our digital collections, we group our archives into categories. Archives can be really useful for historical research and for many other subjects. So within our search strategy, once you develop your strategy and you select your databases, you're going to want to set some more specific parameters for your research. Things like date, language, geographic location, demographics, things like that. So when you go into a database, you'll see something like this on the left-hand side usually, and this is where you can set those parameters. For example, if you are researching COVID-19, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting information from scholarly journals. You're also going to probably want to set the date to be around 2019 forward, unless there was some research being done beforehand. To select a year range, you just take, I think you can see my mouse, right? There's the bar underneath publication date, and you just drag that bar to where you want it to go. So you'll create a from and to range in doing that. If you're looking for historical newspapers because you're doing historical content analysis, you're going to want to start with an older publication date. If you're looking for scientific findings that are new, you're going to want to start with a more recent publication date. And you might also want to narrow down your geographic location. For example, if I was researching police reform in America, police reform can be happening in other countries. And so you would want to select the specific area that you are looking at. Language is important too as well. If you look on the right-hand side here, you'll see that there are icons that will show up once you do a search inside of a catalog, and these icons will tell you the type of a resource that it is. Okay, and then finally, when you find a resource that you have determined is useful for you, you want to make the most out of that resource by mining its references. So you want to go into its bibliography section or its footnotes and its endnotes and see what the author referenced, because you might want to read what they referenced. And then you might want to read something that that person referenced, and you can trace the research back in time. You can also go to the library record for a resource, and you can click on linked text. So what I've just circled here are subject terms. They are used to organize the library records in an easier way. So if you find some subject terms that you like and they bring you to resources that are relevant for you, you might want to incorporate those into your search strategy. You'll also notice at the top there where it says Duncan Deborah, that's linked. If I clicked on that, it would bring me to a list of all other items written by this individual. So in the chat box, if everybody could just tell me true or false, information found in a library database is always reliable. So it can be confusing, and I know that when I was taught this earlier on in my education, I got the impression that everything you find in a database is going to be reliable, factual, and it's not. That's not true at all, actually, because libraries collect information sources for many different reasons. We, for example, have a bunch of news databases. Inside of these databases, we're capturing the news as it was presented so that researchers in the future can look back on that and they can analyze what came out in the news. That doesn't mean that what is represented in these articles is factual. So everybody has to make sure that we are evaluating our articles very, very well. And I'm going to talk to you about that. So basically, scholarly articles are more reliable. It doesn't mean they're flawless, but they are more reliable because they have undergone a rigorous peer review. So how will you know if something is scholarly? First, it will have a structured layout, which includes different sections to organize it, like the abstract section, objectives, methodology, analysis, and so forth. It will also be published specifically in a peer-reviewed journal. It will be edited for content, format, and style. So if you see a lot of errors inside an article, chances are it has not been peer-reviewed. It will also include a very thorough and accurate citation. And if you follow the citations back, they should be verifiable. And the article will have very intentional wording, specialized terminology that maybe somebody who is very familiar with the field will know, but somebody who isn't won't really know. It would require subject expertise to understand, and it usually includes graphs and charts and tables, but very few advertisements. Sometimes there will be an advertisement, but it should not have a lot of advertisements. Those are scholarly articles, but sometimes you will be asked to only include scholarly articles. Sometimes you'll be asked to include a subset of scholarly articles only, called empirical articles. Empirical research is scholarly, but it also observes real life situations. It's more like a scientific experiment, and it will describe the findings of an original research study. So how do you know if it's empirical? It will describe the research design. It will articulate the question and objectives. It will outline the plan for conducting the research. And it will also include a lot of data analysis. It's going to gather primary data and analyze it, and it will articulate the methodology, the methods that somebody took to collect this data. It will also articulate the sampling methods. So it's going to limit what it's looking at to a smaller sample group area or time scale. And then it will relate that later to a larger group of people. It will use the smaller subset and examples to relate to a larger group of people. And ultimately, an empirical research project will be able to be reproduced by another person, because throughout the whole article, it was articulated the design of the research, the process that people took to take the information and analyze it, and so forth. Then you're going to need to select your sources, evaluate them, and synthesize them. First, you're going to gain an awareness of the contents of an article using the library record and the abstract of the library record. And you'll decide if you want to go further on and read it, because you don't want to waste your time if it's not relevant to your research. And then you'll want to save it to your reference management system, put it in a category, and that's your selection stage. You'll move on to evaluating. You're going to read it. You're going to think about, is it relevant to my research? What gives the author authority, and how do I know they actually have authority? Does the methods that they took for the research make sense? What perspectives are included and which ones are excluded? Is the author biased? And is the data presented in a biased way? And finally, you're going to want to synthesize your findings, not analyze yet, just synthesize and bring them together. You're going to be identifying trends in the contents and method and the framework. And you're going to group your sources, group your articles into logical categories. Once you do that, you can move on to higher order analysis, which is more than just reading an article. I don't know if anybody else will sometimes find that they're reading an article and then they have to go back a couple of sentences to read it again. If you have, please say that in the chat. But to avoid doing that, I suggest using the BDA method. BDA means before, during, and after. And what you're going to do is, before you engage with it or read, I say engage because you're really deeply engaging with it. Before you engage with an article, you're going to think, what do I already know about this subject? Or what do I think I know about this subject? I like to record these things because, again, I can refer to them when I'm writing up my literature review. Then, while I'm reading the article, during it, I'm going to be thinking, what am I wondering? What questions do I have? What isn't adding up? What is an idea that might be useful? What's missing? And then after I engage with the article, I'll write up, what did I learn from this? What was the most important piece of information that I gained? And then I can use this to know what the article was about when I refer to it later. After I engage deeply with the research, I'm going to make sure that I'm reflecting on bias, my own bias and the bias of others in the research process, because anything that I'm reading, there's multiple people involved in it, especially if it's peer reviewed. Everybody has bias, and so we want to consider that. Also, when you want to get to the point of higher order analysis, you probably are going to want to reach out to the library's research data services team about in vivo training. We also have recorded sessions of our past in vivo workshops that you can see on our website. In vivo is a program that's used to perform complex content analysis, qualitative content analysis. So I love in vivo and I recommend it. Writing strategies. In order to produce a quality literature review, you need to construct it in a way that the person who is reading it is going to want to read it, they're going to understand what you're saying, and they're going to be able to follow along. So to do that, you're first going to orient the reader. You're going to do this by breaking your literature review into logical sections, which is like you will frequently see the section of intro, methodology, analysis, sampling, things like that. You're also going to use meta discourse, which is language used to guide the reader from one thought to another. So if you're concluding on one area of your section of your literature review and you're moving on to a second area, but they don't connect seamlessly, you're going to want to make sure you're using language to guide the reader from one section to the next. You're also going to need to decide if you want to use reader prominent citations or research prominent citations. Reader prominent or author prominent citations is when you're referencing the author, which gives the article some authority because you're saying this person said whatever they said. Or you can use research prominent citation, which gives the article authority by showing the information. And you can decide when to use opinion language, and you would want to work with your advisor to decide those types of things. And then finally, you're going to inspire the reader. You want to approach this article like you're telling a story. Again, you're guiding the reader on a journey. And use reporting verbs, like the verbs that you hear a lot when you're reading a newspaper article. So-and-so emphasized, so-and-so asserts, so-and-so said this. And you want to practice developing your own voice, because if you've ever experienced this, and you're reading an article and there's just no voice in it, it's not very engaging. Develop your own researcher voice. I see. What is meta discourse? Okay, meta discourse is language that you'll write into your literature review that will help to guide the reader through the story, kind of like a narrator would in a novel. And then, of course, you're going to craft a stimulating conclusion. Okay, so I have two things that I'd like to do. I would like to first ask everybody to please follow this link. You could either type it in or use the QR code and fill out the assessment. But I would also like, if you have any specific questions about literature reviews, if you can put it in the chat, I'll answer them for you now. So first I'm going to answer the question, can you please tell me how to choose the range from the website? So first, you need to actually do a search. So I'm just going to quickly choose a database by subject. I'm going to go into sociology, and let's choose sociology database. I'm going to go to advanced search, and I'm going to search for police reform. And you'll notice I put police reform in quotations because I want the database to understand I mean the full phrase. I'm going to say police reform and poverty. Now on the left-hand side here, you can see that I have 307 results, which actually is pretty good. And the reason why it's not unmanageable is because I specifically chose a subject database and I didn't just go into the Discover search. And if you scroll down, this is where you can decide a date range. So if I wanted articles only from 2017 on, I would do that and then click update. And now you'll see it's gone down to 97 results. And let's say I also want peer reviewed, so I'm going to click that on the left-hand side. Let's say I want in New York. Now I have 7. Yeah. So the writing studio, you can meet with them and they'll help you with your writing techniques. And if you just say specifically meta discourse, they'll help you with that. Another tip that I have is read more scholarly articles and you'll pick up on the meta discourse. So when you're reading, don't just pay attention to the content, but pay attention to the way that the information is being presented and the way the article is bringing you through, or the author is bringing you through the article. And that will give you some examples of meta discourse to build into your writing. Okay, Zotero walkthrough, let me show you. Okay, I'm going to answer stuff about citation now. So citation management resources, I specifically prefer to use Zotero, but different departments, depending on what you're studying, will have one that they use widely. So I would suggest contact your advisor and ask what you should be using. EndNote is great and Mendeley is great. They all essentially give you the same kind of things. But if you go to our website and you go to research, and then you go to research guides, okay? You can search our guide. So we pulled together information on different subjects and presented them nice and neat for you. One of those subjects would be Zotero. So if I just search Zotero, you'll see in bold here, that's the page that it's on. So I'll click Zotero. And this is all information you need to know about Zotero. Got lots of videos for you, like how to install it and a whole workshop on how to use it. You can also go in and search for EndNote. We have the same thing for EndNote. And if you go down here, you'll see, don't like EndNote, check out these other ones. And there's a citation manager comparison guide to help you make the choice. All right. Can I download EndNote from here? Yes, not specifically from this page, but there will be a link to download it right here. So if I click on it, it'll bring me to where I can download it. You're very welcome, Joanne. Okay, would you be able to answer that question more in a one-on-one? Absolutely, absolutely. I do one-on-ones. I also do small group if you're interested in that, but absolutely, just send me an email and I'll chat with you.